What is up, Scream Team? Zach Cherry here, and in this video, I'm going to be going over all of the upcoming horror movies that are either slated for release in 2025 or the well-known IP that is coming out in the near future that doesn't necessarily have a release date, and just sort of ranking it in a tier list based on my excitement. So the first release that we have coming up is Wolfman. This is being released by Blumhouse and is the next in line of the Universal monster remakes that started 5 years ago now with The Invisible Man, which was also written and directed by Lee Whannell, who's returning to do this. The marketing for this movie hasn't been anything exceptional, like it hasn't done it any favors, but I do have a lot of faith in Lee Whannell, so I'm actually very excited for this one. I think it might be good. So Wolfman is going to be in S tier. Next, we have Presence, released by Neon. This is directed by Steven Soderbergh and written by David Coep. Lucy Liu stars in the movie. The entire movie is going to be filmed from the first-person perspective of the spirit. I have a lot of faith in David Coep. He wrote and directed a really great supernatural thriller called Stir of Echoes from 1999. It starred Kevin Bacon. So this is one that I'm actually also very excited for. I'm actually a little more excited about it than Wolfman, so let's put it at the top here. After that, we have Companion. January 31st, a billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. This is released by New Line, produced by Zach Kreger, writer-director of Barbarian, and stars Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid. The proper trailer came out very recently and gave away a little bit more than I wish it had. That's not to say that all of the twists are on the table here, because it looks like there might be more in the actual movie, but even still, it looks like it's going to be something that I'm really going to enjoy. So I mean, not to be like overly positive here, but I'm going to put Companion, again, I'm going to put it second. I'll put it between Presence and Wolfman. After that, we have Heart Eyes, which is coming out February 7th. For the past several years, the Heart Eyes killer has wreaked havoc on Valentine's Day by stalking and murdering romantic couples. This Valentine's Day, no couple is safe. This is being released by Spyglass and written by Michael Kennedy, who also wrote Freaky. I have a thing for, holiday themed slashers, especially Valentine's. I'm all for it. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that we need more fun slashers. I think that I'm going to put this one in S. I feel like I'm against type here because normally I am super negative, which is not a bad thing, but beginning of 2025 is looking pretty exciting here. Next up, we have The Monkey, February 21st. When twin brothers Bill and Hal find their father's old monkey toy in the attic, a series of gruesome deaths start. The siblings decide to throw the toy away and move on with their lives, growing apart over the years. Based on the short story by Stephen King, this is being released by Neon, produced by James Wan, written and directed by Osgood Perkins, who, has kind of gained some traction lately with Longlegs. I wasn't a huge fan of Longlegs, to be perfectly honest with you, but I'm interested in following his career at this point and just seeing what comes next. From what I've seen of this movie, it looks like it could be a lot of fun, but I'm not going to put this in S. I'll put this in A, because I'm going to see it. Next up is Vicious, tentatively scheduled for February 28th. A woman spends the night fighting for her existence as she slips down a rabbit hole contained inside a gift from a late night visitor. Written and directed by Brian Bertino, who wrote and directed the original Strangers. This is starring Dakota Fanning. The premise sounds cool, but until I know more, I'm gonna put this one in right in the middle. And, anything I put in the middle here is just going to sort of be movies that I just need more intel on. After that, we have Opus, which is releasing March 14th. A young writer is invited to the remote compound of a legendary pop star who mysteriously disappeared 30 years ago. Surrounded by the star's cult of sycophants and intoxicated journalists, she finds herself in the middle of his twisted plan. This is an A24 release starring Ayo Edebiri and John Malkovich. Again, this is is one that I don't really have a whole lot of information about. The premise sounds interesting, but I think I might like the premise of Vicious a little bit better. So I'll just, again, it's middle tier just because I need more information. After that, we have The Woman in the Yard. This is March 28th release. A woman in black appears on a family's front lawn and delivers a chilling warning. No one knows where she came from, what she wants, or when she will leave. This is Blumhouse, directed by Jaume Colette Serra, who previously directed House of Wax, Orphan, The Shallows. I mean, I haven't seen The Shallows, but I like House of Wax and Orphan. So, I think that he has a good sense of style with his filmmaking. So again, just because I don't really know a whole lot about this, like the premise seems kind of basic, but still I think just because of the name attached to it, I would probably put this above Vicious. Next up, we have Death of a Unicorn. There's not a definitive release date for this. It's just kind of known that it'll be first quarter of 2025. The trailer's already come out, but this is about a father-daughter duo, Riley and Elliot, who hit a unicorn with their car and bring it to the wilderness retreat of a mega wealthy pharmaceutical CEO. So again, A24, Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega star. The trailer, I mean, it looks more goofy than it does horror, but I have more information about this. I'm not completely sold on it, but I will see this, and let's put this underneath the monkey. After that, we have Drop, which is releasing April 11th. A widowed mother's first date in years takes a terrifying turn when she's bombarded with anonymous threatening messages on her phone during their upscale dinner, leaving her questioning if her charming date is behind the harassment. This is a Blumhouse release. This is directed by Christopher Landon and stars Megan Fahey from White Lotus. Now, this movie is PG-13. The poster for it has the tagline, "Everybody's a suspect." So I feel like this is going to be, and I hate to say it, like a movie that's ripping off the surface level details of Scream. This idea that like she's getting harassing text messages rather than phone calls. I don't really enjoy movies where technology or like cell phone use is like at the forefront. I feel like it kind of takes away from a more visceral human experience that we have with a story. So I'm not too interested in seeing a 90-minute movie about a woman who's constantly interacting with her phone. Now, I could be completely off base and wrong about that assessment, but it's PG-13. I like Christopher Landon, but I don't know that like this premise really sounds all that intriguing to me. So I'm going to be honest. This is going to be a C tier for me. After that, we have Sinners, which is releasing April 18th. Trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. This is Warner Brothers, written and directed by Ryan Coogler and starring Michael B. Jordan. Trailer's already come out and it tells me nothing. I mean, like, it's a lot, but the fact that it doesn't really give much away is interesting. I question how much of it is horror, but I'm intrigued. So this is actually a movie that I will put in the A tier, but I'll put it below Death of a Unicorn. After that, we have The Ritual, April 18th. Two priests, one questioning his faith and one reckoning with a troubled past, must put aside their differences to save a possessed young woman through a difficult and dangerous series of exorcisms. This is starring Al Pacino and Dan Stevens, and I mean, if that synopsis sounds familiar to you, it's The Exorcist. So I don't know what's going on here. Typically, as a rule, I'm not a huge fan of religious horror or exorcism movies. The only thing that's really kind of intriguing about this is Al Pacino and Dan Stevens. Is there a twist on The Exorcist spin? Like, what is this movie? It just feels like it's gonna be just a retread of a lot of what we've seen in the past. So this, I'm gonna put in D tier. Next up, we have Until Dawn, releasing April 25th. A group spends the weekend at a ski lodge on the anniversary of their friend's disappearance, unaware that they are not alone. This is a video game adaptation. I've never played Until Dawn. I don't really know anything about it. Don't come for me. But, I am intrigued. This is a Sony release. It's directed by David F. Sandberg, who has done Annabelle Creation and Lights Out, which I don't love, but I mean, we're dealing with a different different IP here. Either way, this is going to be A tier. Probably put it below The Monkey. While typically video game adaptations aren't great, they can still be a lot of fun. This is the year in horror that I'm looking for fun, so if that happens to be Until Dawn, then so be it. Next up, we have Final Destination Bloodlines, releasing May 16th. This is the 6th film in the Final Destination franchise. The plot is still unknown at this time. However, it's rumored that Tony Todd's character returns, which would make this one of his last, if not the last film appearance of his before his death. The screenplay is written by Guy Busick, who wrote Scream 5, 6, Ready or Not, Abigail. This has been a movie that's kind of been in the making for a long time and definitely got held up by the pandemic, the Hollywood worker strike. So it's nice that it's finally coming out. I know this is going to be released in IMAX, so that's exciting. And, you know, speaking of wanting 2025 to be a year of fun, this is going to go, you know, leapfrog right to the top of the list, because this is one that I've been waiting for a long time. Next up, we have 28 Years Later. This is releasing June 20th. This is said to be the first part of a trilogy. This is a Columbia Pictures release. Danny Boyle returns to write and direct, and Cillian Murphy reprises his role. I'm not sure how big that role will be just yet, but he is joined by Aaron Taylor Johnson and Ray Fiennes. I've obviously seen both 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, and at the time that was like a pretty big innovation of the zombie subgenre, and this is one that I've been waiting for a while. So I'm gonna see this one. I'm not incredibly anticipating of it, but we're gonna put it in S. We'll put it at the bottom. Next up, we have Threegan 2.0. This is releasing June 27th. Plot is currently under wraps. This is Blumhouse and Atomic Monster. Akela Cooper is returning with a new script that brings back Allison Williams and Violet McGraw's characters. Now, I was kind of let down by Megan. I just don't think that it really went for it, or at least just lived up to the potential that it could have. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it is a PG-13 movie, and they had to hold back on a lot of the violence. The movie was entertaining to a point, but it left a lot to be desired, and I would hope that with this sequel that they would do a little bit more. I would like more violence. I would like this to be an R-rated movie. So this one I'm actually going to put in the C category. Next up, we have I Know What You Did Last Summer, the reboot. This is releasing July 18th. A group of friends is terrorized by a stalker who knows about a gruesome incident from their past. This is Columbia Pictures, a completely new cast, but with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. both reprising their roles from the first two movies. Ray and Julie are not necessarily characters that, you know, I need to see back again. I think that they're actually kind of the least interesting aspect of the first movie. And speaking of the first movie, I much prefer the sequel, actually, but I've never been a huge fan of the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies. I think that there's much better offerings in the late 90s pantheon of slashers. Urban Legend, for example. I Know What You Did Last Summer is like a really good premise that had an excellent first act, and then all the stuff with Sarah Michelle Gellar is great, like the chase scene at the end, but I feel like outside of that, the movie's kind of dull to me. So if this is just sort of going to be a retread of that, if they're just sort of remaking the concept with a new group of characters, I don't know how successfully that will entertain me. I know a lot of people are excited for this, and I would be lying if I put this anywhere other than the top of the list, because I am intrigued, I am excited, I just don't have high expectations. But that actually might work in my favor, because usually that's when I'm pleasantly surprised. Next up is Witchboard. This is releasing July 26th. This is a reimagining of the 1986 horror classic. That's really all we know about it at this point. However, it is going to be written and directed by Chuck Russell, the writer-director of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, which for my money is the best of that franchise. I'm all for the idea that remaking movies that have interesting concepts but not necessarily the best execution, those are the movies that should be remade. And the original Witchboard is not that great. I think that this is one that could do really well with a new perspective, especially someone like Chuck Russell. And Ouija boards kind of freak me out. So this is actually one that I'm going to put I'm gonna put it below Final Destination 6. So with that said, we are moving on to Thread, an Insidious tale, releasing August 29th. A couple resorts to a spell to travel back in time, hoping to prevent their daughter's tragic death. Blumhouse and Atomic Monsters putting this out, written and directed by Jeremy Slater, creator of the Exorcist TV series, and starring Mandy Moore. I don't really care much for the Insidious franchise. I've seen all of them except 4. The first one's good. I have a good enough time with it, but I've not liked any of the sequels. The most recent one really didn't enjoy at all. I thought that was going to be the last one, so it's interesting that we're now, I guess, is it a spin-off? It's an Insidious tale? Whatever the case may be, it just feels like it's going to be more of the same. So this I'm going to actually put in D. After that, we have The Conjuring, The Last Rites, releasing September 5th. This is Atomic Monster release as well, directed by Michael Chavez. Curse of La Llorona, Nun 2, Conjuring Devil Made Me Do It. So he's made his rounds through the Conjuring universe, and obviously Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson will return as Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I mean, from the sounds of it, this is going to be the final one, but as long as people go see them, I'm sure that there will be more. So I don't trust that it's going to be the last one. Now, the Conjuring universe in general, like, I'm not really a big fan of these movies. I'll maybe see this, like, it depends on how I'm feeling. I'm gonna put it in C. I have a little bit more interest than Insidious. Next up, we have Him, also known as Goat. This is releasing September 19th. A promising young football player joins an isolated compound to train under a dynasty team's aging quarterback. This is a Monkey Paw production, so produced by Jordan Peele, and is starring Marlon Wayans. And for more movies that I just don't really know, like, what it is beyond the basic premise, I'll probably be putting this in B. However, Monkey Paw Productions is a little bit more promising to me than everything else, so I'll put it above The Woman in the Yard. Next up, we have Saw 11, Lionsgate, releasing September 26th. Tobin Bell will return as Jigsaw. That's really all we know. This was delayed a year, possibly for a new script. This should have been out already, and now it got pushed back. So I don't know if this is going to be a continuation of where we left off with Saw X. It's so convoluted at this point in terms of this franchise and where everything is. I don't really go into these movies expecting a whole lot other than maybe some very interesting and gory deaths. So I mean, while a lot of the movies are hit or miss for me, I really love Saw 6. I think that's my favorite one. I'm going to obviously see this. I've seen all of them. Let's put it at the top of A, because it's just one of those franchises that I'm always going to be loyal to. Next up, we have The Bride. This is a reimagining of The Bride of Frankenstein. This is September 26th. This is Warner Brothers. It is written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal and starring Christian Bale. The film is categorized as also being a musical, and it's said to have big dance numbers. The death knell for me here is it being a musical. This is not really something that I have any desire to see. That's just me. I'm not into stuff like this, so I'm gonna put this in D tier at the very bottom. Next up is The Black Phone 2. This is releasing October 17th. Plot is completely unknown at this point, but this is Blumhouse. Scott Derrickson returns to follow up the first movie, and Ethan Hawke returns as the grabber. I wasn't blown away by The Black Phone. I enjoyed it to a point, but it's not something that I've ever felt the desire to revisit. But having said that, once we get a little bit more intel on this, I might have a different tune about it, but until then, I'm gonna put this in the B category. Next up is Predator Badlands. This is releasing November 7th. Plot is under wraps. 20th Century Studios, written and directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who previously wrote and directed Prey. This is going to be starring Elle Fanning and releasing theatrically, as opposed to the streaming on Hulu release that they had done with Prey. I liked Prey. I don't think I was as crazy about it as most people were, but this is something that I'll definitely check out. So this one, I'm gonna say, let's put this below Until Dawn. Next up is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This is releasing December 5th. Blumhouse, first film made nearly $300 million on a $20 million budget. So that's pretty impressive. I'm guessing that a lot of that had to do with a built-in audience for the games. Again, this is not a video game series that I've ever played, but I did see the first one and it wasn't for me. You know, it was very sanitized, very safe PG-13 horror. I just felt like there was a lot of filler. I mean, how many times did we watch him have that same nightmare. So I would probably put this, let's put it above this Ritual. Religious horror always sinks right to the bottom for me. So I'll give Five Nights at Freddy's 2 just a little bit more leeway than that one. Next up, we have The Anaconda. This is releasing December 25th, so Christmas Day. The premise is circus performers stranded in rainforest after anaconda attacks boat. And I'm reading this as it was written on the thing. Encounter poacher hunting anaconda who sees them as bait. Performers use circus skills for survival against deadly threat. This is a Columbia Pictures and Platinum Dunes release. Jack Black and Paul Rudd are starring, and I'm not sure if this is a remake, a reimagining, a reboot, maybe a sequel. Anaconda is a bad movie, but like not even in the best way possible, but it's one of those movies that you just got to see it, and it is what it is. Remaking movies that have interesting premises but not necessarily the best execution. I think that Anaconda is a good example of that, so I'm actually a little excited for this. I like that it's taking more of a comedic angle because, well, the movies are ridiculous, and again, 2025 needs more fun. So this I'm going to put in let's put it right next to the other Paul Rudd movie. Next up, also released on December 25th, is The Housemaid. This follows a struggling woman who is happy to start over as a housemaid for an affluent elite couple. This is a Lionsgate release directed by Paul Feig, who directed Bridesmaids and A Simple Favor, and stars Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried. This is something that I need more intel about. However, I like the cast. I'm gonna put this in B. I'll put this at the top. Next is Fear Street Prom Queen. There is no known release date for this other than that it is coming in 2025. Obviously, this is going to be Netflix again, and it's a continuation of the previous Fear Street trilogy, which wasn't really my thing. I think that this is another one where I have to kind of just wait and see, but I also wouldn't put it in the middle tier just because based on my experience with the other Fear Street movies, I think that I would probably enjoy this less. So let's put this under Conjuring Last Rites. Speaking of Netflix, we have Frankenstein. No definitive release date other than sometime this year. This is a screenplay that was written by Guillermo del Toro, also directed by him, and the film stars Mia Goth, Oscar Isaac, Christoph Waltz, and Jacob Elordi as Frankenstein's monster. This is actually one that I probably have a little bit more excitement for. Again, it's not affiliated with the Blumhouse Universal Monster remakes, but let's put this in the A tier. I'll put it below Predator. Then we have Shelby Oaks, which again, no known release date other than 2025. A woman's desperate search for her long-lost sister falls into obsession upon realizing that the imaginary demon from their childhood may have been real. This is a Neon release, written and directed by Chris Stuckman, and featuring Keith David from The Thing. This is a found footage movie, or at least partially found footage. I'm not sure. That it definitely has a paranormal activity sounding premise to it. I'm actually very intrigued by this, especially just seeing as Chris is a YouTuber turned filmmaker, which is my goal as well. But just based on wanting to support other creators who are moving into the field of filmmaking, this is something that, I'm rooting for, and I hope it does really well. I'm excited to see it. I'm very curious about it. I'm gonna move this to the top. Then we have The Strangers Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 as well, I guess. No known release date. We just know 2025. I've heard April for Chapter 2. This is Lionsgate again, second part of a trilogy where all the movies were filmed back to back. The first chapter made $48 million against an $8.5 million budget, so good for them for making that much money, and I guess for all the people who didn't like it, viewer beware. Having said that, I didn't hate The Strangers Chapter 1. It was exactly what I expected it to be. I've never really been a huge fan of this franchise. Like, I think that it's kind of mid, but for what they did, it was competent. It was done well enough, and I think that while I'm not eager to see where the story goes from here, I'm still gonna see it. So let's put it below sinners. Moving into 2026, the first release we have slated is Scream 7, which is going to be February 27th, 2026. Currently in production, this is going to be Spyglass and Paramount again, directed by Kevin Williamson, who wrote the first two movies, and Scream 4. This time it will be written by Guy Busick. Screams 5 and 6. Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, Mason Gooding, all confirmed to be back at the time of this recording. Obviously, I've talked about this movie ad nauseum. You can check out the last video I did, the 10 things that I wanted to see in Scream 7. I also covered it on my podcast for the Patreon exclusive if you head over to the Cherry Picker. But I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't put this anywhere other than the top. This is obviously one of my favorite franchises. It's a big deal, so S tier, top of the list. After that, we have The Mummy, which is going to be releasing April 17th, 2026. Now, this is Blumhouse and Atomic Monster, so this is going to be the next Universal Monster remake after Invisible Man and this year's Wolfman. This one is lined up to be written and directed by Lee Cronin, who wrote and directed Evil Dead Rise. I wasn't crazy about Evil Dead Rise. I don't know, what did you guys think? But he's certainly a director who has a vision, and I think that the Universal classic monster movies, there's enough separation in time from when they were made till now that you can infuse some sort of new spin on the story, which is kind of what we've seen so far. So if that's going to be the trend that continues, I'm interested in what's going to happen with that. So in terms of The Mummy, it's still a far ways off, so let's just put it below everything in A, but I am excited for it. Then October 23rd, 2026, we have the untitled fourth film directed by Jordan Peele. This is going to be Monkey Paw Productions again. This is currently in pre-production. No details are known, which is pretty standard for all of Jordan Peele's movies at this point. This was originally supposed to be released this past Christmas, so this would have already been out at this point. However, it was pulled from Universal's schedule following the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes. Jordan Peele has proven himself to be a director who kind of infuses this carnival funhouse vibe to his movies. I feel like every time we go to see something new from him, it's like an attraction or a spectacle. For someone who's established themselves as a filmmaker like this, I automatically want to see anything that they do next. You know what? Just because it's so far off, let's put it at the bottom of S. But, you know, when we find out more information and it gets closer, I'm going to be really hyped for this. Next up, we have Bring Her Back, which is currently in post-production. No known release date at all. Story is unknown. All we know is that this is A24 and is written and directed by Danny and Michael Philippou, who previously did Talk to Me. I liked Talk to Me. I didn't love it. I'm gonna put this in B of like the unknown category, but I'll move it to the top there. After that, we have Eddington, which is also currently in post-production. No release dates. This revolves around a couple stranded in a small New Mexico town during the pandemic. Initially welcomed, the town takes a sinister turn by nightfall. This is also A24, written and directed by Ari Aster, starring Pedro Pascal, Emma Stone, Austin Butler, and Joaquin Phoenix, who plays a sheriff with bigger ambitions. This is said to be a contemporary Western, but is listed as horror. I'm a fan of Hereditary and Midsommar. Wasn't crazy about Beau is Afraid. I feel like that was a bit of a miss. Also not really horror, which does give me pause of like whether this will kind of fully be horror. However, I feel that it's got a good cast, that just by the nature of his past works, I would be intrigued to see this, but I'll put it in A because again, we need more intel, we need a trailer, any of that stuff. So I'm gonna put this above Strangers. After that, we have Faces of Death. This is also in post-production. No known release date. A woman who moderates a YouTube-like platform responsible for filtering out any content that is offensive or violent comes across a group on the website that appears to be reenacting the murders from the original film. However, given the digital age of widespread misinformation online, are these murders real or fake? This is a reboot of the franchise that was presented as documentary style film depicting various gruesome means of death. I've never seen a Faces of Death movie. All I know about it is the reference in Scream 2, but it seems like this is sort of like a meta, like almost like New Nightmare to Nightmare on Elm Street franchise situation. It doesn't sound terrible, but I mean, like all the YouTube and technological stuff to it, it just feels like it could already be dated. I can't say I'm overly excited, but I'm intrigued. Let's put this at the bottom of B. Then we have The Hand That Rocks the Cradle remake. This is currently in production. There's no set release date yet. 20th Century Studios will star Micah Monroe and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. That's great casting, which might be the one thing that's really kind of boosting this for me. I'm gonna put this above Anaconda. Speaking of remakes, we have the untitled American Psycho project, which is said to be in pre-production right now, so no known release date. This is a remake of the 2000s film. Will be directed by Luca Guadagnino, who previously did the Suspiria remake. Austin Butler is slated to star as the Patrick Bateman character. However, original American Psycho author Bret Easton Ellis is now saying that the news of this movie is a complete fabrication, including Austin Butler's casting and all of it. It seems like it's something that we're just gonna have to wait and see. When this was announced, though, there was just a huge negative uproar. Nobody wants this movie remade. The movie exists maybe not perfectly as it is now, but I think it's a really great film, and I can't see it being an example of something with a good concept that needs a better execution, because the execution is fine. Here's the thing. I say that I don't want this, but if it comes out, I'm gonna see it, and I'm probably gonna see it above all this other stuff, so I'm gonna put it at the top of C. After that, we have Untitled Creature from the Black Lagoon remake. No known release dates. This is Blumhouse and Atomic Monster, and this will supposedly be the fourth Blumhouse monster movie after The Mummy. James Wan will direct this, so there's got to be something interesting about it that has him wanting to do that. So I think just for the very nature that I'm excited for The Mummy and Wolfman, I'm going to put Black Lagoon next to The Mummy. After that, we have Orphan 3, which is in pre-production right now. No release date, plot is unknown. No telling if this is another prequel or a sequel, but this is Dark Castle Entertainment and Lionsgate. William Brent Bell will return from Orphan First Kill to direct, and Isabel Furman returns to play Esther. I love the original Orphan, did not care for the prequel. I think that the fact that it was a prequel really hurt the movie, because there is no reason that that couldn't have been a sequel instead. I think by the very nature of it being a prequel and having to kind of conform to the story of where things lined up going into the first film, they kind of had to put all of the interesting stuff to the wayside at that point, and it just sort of became this paint by numbers finale where it was almost just a retread of the first. So if this is going to be a sequel, if this is a continuation, I think that Orphan would actually work really well as a franchise. So definitely one that I'm looking out for. I'll put it in A, but let's put it below all this other stuff. After that, we have The People Under the Stairs. This is pre-production, no known release dates. We haven't really heard any news on this in a while, but the original is about an African-American teen who breaks into his former landlord's mansion seeking rumored riches, but finds a chamber of horrors run by incestuous serial killer siblings. So very strange premise. This is going to be Monkey Paw Productions, so Jordan Peele will produce. No idea if this is going to be a remake or more of a reboot in the vein of what Monkey Paw Productions had done with Candyman 2021. Having said that, I really liked Candyman 2021. So I think that if they're doing something similar to that, People Under the Stairs could be very promising. So I'm going to put that in A tier. This is something that I would be very excited to see. Let's put this above Until Dawn. Next up is Ready or Not sequel. Currently in pre-production, no known release date. Radio Silence is returning with Samara Weaving, who stars once again as Grace. I love Ready or Not, but that to me always felt like a standalone movie. I also don't know where they could potentially go with the story. Like if there's a great idea, then by all means, I'd love to see it, but I'm not as excited about this as I am for other things, but I'll move it to the top of B because it's one of those things that like, once I get more of an idea of the premise, my excitement level will probably adjust. Next is Scary Movie 6. This is in pre-production. The Wayans brothers are returning to produce, write, and star after not being involved in the franchise since Scary Movie 2. Dave Sheridan is also listed in the cast as returning to play Doofy. So it seems like this is going to be a direct continuation of that storyline from the first movie at least. There's no confirmation yet on Anna Faris or Regina Hall. Either way, Boy. Scary Movie 6 is going to be S tier. Let's put it below Final Destination. After that, we got Smile 3. This is in pre-production. No known release date. Parker Finn will once again write and direct. I still haven't seen Smile 2. I liked Smile 1, so I'm definitely going to check the sequel out. Currently, this is not something that I am overly excited about until I kind of see that second movie, so let's put it below the Ready or Not movie. Then we have Thanksgiving 2. This is in pre-production. This is going to be Spyglass. Eli Roth will once again direct and write the script with Jeff Rendell. Could possibly release as early as this Thanksgiving. If not, it might not be until Thanksgiving 2026. I wasn't crazy about the original. This was a movie that I was kind of really excited for, just based on the initial Grindhouse concept from way back in like 2007. So I was just a little disappointed that this was kind of more of a remake of that rather than just making that movie. Having said that, I love slasher movies and murder mysteries, so I'm gonna see it. I'm not expecting a whole lot. I hope that it's better than the first one, but I'm gonna put this below Strangers. Actually, let's put it above. I gotta be real here. Then we have They Follow. This is in pre-production, no known release date. Obviously, this is going to be the follow-up to It Follows. David Robert Mitchell returns to write and direct, and Micah Monroe will reprise her role. Speaking of standalone horror films, I don't know how I feel about a sequel to this. Having said that, if there's a good concept to, where they could take the story next, I'm all for that. So I would actually put this in the A tier. Let's put it above Paddington. I just realized that I accidentally skipped the untitled Exorcist / Mike Flanagan project, which is currently in pre-production. This is scheduled to release March 13th, 2026. This is going to be Blumhouse, written and directed by Mike Flanagan. He is a great filmmaker as well, but I just feel like he's kind of saddled himself to IP. Like most of everything he does is IP. And like after leaving Netflix, I'd love to see some original ideas from him. But this is not a franchise that I really care for. I don't even think that there's really a lot of interest in it. So having said that, I don't care. I mean, like, I'll say C tier. It's Mike Flanagan, so I'm gonna see it. Like, it's gonna be quality, but it's hard to care about this. And then that brings us to the last two things. So the untitled Possession remake project, which is currently in development. Parker Finn of Smile will write and direct, and Robert Pattinson is a producer on the film and is rumored to star as the Sam Neill character. I feel like I'd probably be more willing to see a Possession remake than like an American Psycho remake. So I would put this in B, but let's move it above Faces of Death. And then finally, we have Terrifier 4, which was just announced. Plot is unknown, no release date. All we know is that Damien Leone will once again write and direct. I've only seen Terrifier 2, so I still have to see 1 and 3. This franchise, like, to be honest, is not really my thing. I still enjoyed Terrifier 2 for what it was. So this is something that I plan to see. It's not a priority, but I love that in this day and age, there's still new franchises that can come out of the woodwork and new horror icons like Art the Clown that can be made. So that's something that I want to support. So I would put that in the A tier. Anyway, that is my complete list of anticipation level for all of the upcoming horror movies. I want to thank my Patreon supporters, Kyle McKinney, Michael Boswell, Colleen Gallagher, Shantae Moore, Brandy, BB, and Joshi. If you guys want to see even more horror movie content, you can head over to these playlists right over here. Until next time, I've been Zach Cherry. Thank you for watching, and I'll be right back.